Hello and welcome to Secular Soapbox. I am Apostacie and I'm joined by my amazing co-host Baphometal. Today we are welcoming our guests David McDonald from Deep Drinks podcast and Neil from Gnostic Informant. And we are discussing dishonest apologetics. Please feel free to interact with us in the chat during the show and give this video a thumbs up. Also, if you like what we do here on Skeptic Haven, please subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on all of our great content. Let's start the show.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, wow, nice background, Spaghetti.
Spaghetti monster.
That's awesome. Love it.
Look, his literally appendages almost touching the finger.
Yeah, I've never noticed that.
The omnipotent spaghetti monster.
Ramen.
Love it. Well, welcome, you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Neil, it's so great to meet you. David, it's awesome having you back again.
Thank you.
Love doing shows with you. So tonight we are discussing the dishonest apologetics, and that's something that I'm pretty sure, well, that's why we asked you guys both to be here, because you are both pretty well versed in this topic, I believe.
Wouldn't you say that's like an oxymoron, though?
Well versed?
Dishonest apologetics?
Right?
Pretty much.
Wait, actually, no. Are they ever not dishonest? Like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what? I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
It's I just thought I would I don't know if I can just quickly interject.
Go
and just
ahead.
Get some venom out. But like I came to the realization recently, I think it was part of it was with you, Neil, we had a discussion on Isaiah 53. Part of something I realized with apologetics is I had this like naive assumption that apologetics was just kind of like someone like trying to like defend their faith, right? And they're like, oh, well, this is the evidence, this points this way, and we kind of believe this for this reason. But it's not. Like someone might get into it for that reason, but the overall, the overreaching thing that apologetics is like a defense lawyer or like a used car salesman. Like you're walking down the street, like just imagine you're walking down the street and you see like a car shop or whatever, like what do they call it, a dealership, and someone's like, hey, come in here. You're like, oh, okay, and you like walk in. They're never not going to tell you that you don't need a car. They're like, this car's great, and you're like, oh, well, that car kind of has some problems. They're like, oh, really? That car has problems? Well, it doesn't really, but what about this car? And they'll point you to another car. They'll never not suggest that you don't have a car. And the same with like a defense lawyer. A defense lawyer's never going to be like, well, he's guilty. They'll always find a way to make it so you're not guilty. And that's something that I kind of realized recently about apologetics. Can I swear?
Yeah,
or
we're
not?
7.
No.
No, I think, how long do we have to be in?
Well, I'm effing, you make me effing mad. Like, you bet your gosh darn your hand. But like, I really, and like when I started like noticing that, and then I started noticing like people were Cameron Battusi of Capturing Christianity. He just gets away with like he just brings on apologist after apologist after apologist. He never engages with the other side, but then he paints this like overwhelming picture of just like oh, there's so much evidence for Christianity. It's like, dude, like let's talk to an Islamic apologist. Like they're gonna disagree with you. Talk to like, and it's wild to me that how dishonest it is. Like it really is dishonest. Kip Davis, we started talking about it now. He's coming on Deep Drinks soon, and we started saying like, what did he say? He said the bankruptcy of apologetics, and it truly is like intellectually bankrupt. It's like,
love that.
Yeah, it really is.
I recently just saw a professor who was from a Catholic or Christian university. Somehow this video got on YouTube. They were recording the class, The professor was pretty cool, dude. He's a pretty smart guy. But they end up talking about the mythical foundation of Rome, and they're all laughing at the fact that Dido cursed Aeneas, and that's how the Carthage and Rome beef started, from this mythical curse. And the class is all laughing like, that's how they explain it. And I'm thinking to myself, how is it any different than Noah cursing Ham? Like, it's the same mythological framework. They're trying to explain why is it that Carthage, that's so close to Rome, why does Rome and Carthage hate each other so much? And they're writing myths about it. It's the same thing in the Old Testament. Oh, why does this happen? Why does this happen? So they write myths about it. But I just thought it was funny how they can so easily point out the mythological, the fables of all these other places.
Yeah,
like they
don't see it.
It's the same thing for your own stuff.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
This isn't apologetics per se, but just a random aside. It's like, we came back from China, my wife and I, once, and we're showing these like beautiful Buddhist temples, and we're talking about like, oh, in this particular form of Buddhism, there's a Buddha of the past, the present, and the future. And I was like, and there was one we couldn't take a photo of that was the Buddha for all women, and it was the only woman Buddha in the world. And we're talking about all this, and my must have struck a chord with and offended some of the Christians that were there. And one of them stood up and went, "Oh, I can't believe anyone can believe this crap," and then just like walked. And I'm like, "Hang on, dog. Like, hang on. From the outside, like, you believe in a God who like flooded the world, who like who sacrificed himself to himself to serve as a loophole for rules that he created that he can't circumvent. It's like, in what world does an omnipotent, all-powerful God need to kill his son? Like,
rules for thee, but not for me, kind of thing, right? Like,
sacrifice is the only way.
It would be like, imagine if I said Marvel comics are real and historical, but DC, that's mythology.
Exactly.
It actually gets worse than that, because I was talking about the Dido myth a second ago. If you actually look at some of these early Christian texts called the Sibylline books, they say that Dido was related to Jezebel. So it's the same universe. It's actually saying some Marvel comics are historical and some aren't. It's actually even worse than that. And even like later, there's a 5th century legend of Saint Demetrius. You can look this up. His name is Saint Demetrius of Eleusis. And the story goes that he was the last hierophant of the Eleusinian mysteries, as a pagan cult in Athens, and he converted to Christianity, so he became a saint. And the story was that the goddess Demeter told him to worship Jesus. So you even have cross mythologies happening even in Christianity early on. And as far as I know, I've never heard any Orthodox Greek ever come out and say, "Oh, it's just mythology." This is like, they thought that was what happened. So I don't know if you count Demeter as an angel or not. Whatever. I don't know how that works, but still, it's like, how do you all of a sudden, after all this time passes by, you just separate yourselves from all the other mythologies when it's all the same stuff?
Exactly.
I feel like I'm on a soapbox here. Secular.
It's okay.
Soapbox.
Well, you're on secular soapbox, so get on that soapbox.
Something Kip, and Kip's in the chat. Dr. Kip.
Hi, Dr. Kip.
Hey, Dr. Kip.
Is something he mentioned is like, he looked up because we're both poisoning our minds, but we're reading The Case for Christ both together before we oh man, that book. Let me tell you, that's one. Anyway, I've never read it before, and I'm reading
movie too.
Oh my god,
we had a movie from it too.
I watched the movie.
Yeah.
Don't recommend.
Okay. And so Kip and I are like kind of talking about like early Christianity, and this is something you talk about, Neil. When I was in ministry college, this is how church history was taught, and this is how like the church, even just the church, has spun this narrative that's just so warped. So this is the church. This is the narrative that I was taught in church. This is the narrative that I was taught in ministry college. Is Jesus and his disciples were kicking around. Some of them, the disciples, were good thinkers, and they wrote down the Gospels, and they wrote down the stories. And then the day of Pentecost came, and it gave everyone the Holy Spirit. And then they went out to all the land and started preaching to people and starting churches. And they had a few disagreements. Like some said, you should get circumcised, and some said, no, don't get circumcised. But they mainly ironed all that out. And then a bit later on, they were like, you know what? Let's put the Bible together, and they canonized it. That's not at all like the story. And Neil said there's one perfect line from Jesus and his disciples all the way up to Constantine, and then Constantine becomes like a Christian, and the Roman Empire becomes Christian. It's not like that at all. Like when Neil came on the show, like we were talking about, like I thought I knew about some of the like early whack Christian beliefs, like reincarnation of the soul, and like the Marcionites who believed the Old Testament God was evil, and these are big Christian sects, right? And now called heresies. And I thought I knew about them. And Neil is like dropping bombshells, like he's dropping the most insane stuff. It's oh, my camera. Sorry, guys.
Oh, that's okay. I thought I did that when I clicked the super. So thank you,
Natalia.
Woo! For the super chat. Thank you.
Keep throwing money at us. Keep throwing money at us.
You can play in there.
I thought.
Why are you hiding? Is this like a analogy to God, or I don't know?
Raptured from us.
There we go.
That was weird.
There we go.
I think it's Satan.
It might keep doing that, unfortunately.
That's okay. Don't worry.
I'll keep my rants short. But Neil, like Neil, you talked a little bit about about on that channel. But can you I don't know if it's okay if Neil goes into like the first.
Yes.
The first lie that I think that you're taught in apologetics, which is like that it's just this perfect line of dissent where it's not like it's like this, like there's some really weird Christian beliefs.
Yeah,
I mean, teach us things.
I think the best way to approach it is if you were to compare the most like different groups of Christians today, which I would say, let's say Mormons and Catholics are like completely opposite ends of the spectrum of Christianity. Whereas Mormons, some people don't even say Mormons aren't even Christians. Some people say Catholics aren't even Christians, and maybe Baptists are somewhere in the middle between those two, whatever. In fact, Mormons and Catholics have more in common than the early Christians did.
Wow.
Because they actually believe in some of the historical things about Jesus. They agree on they agree on like Jesus being God. They agree on him being the Son of God. There be some sort of Trinity they sort of somewhat maybe a little bit differ on the Trinity idea, but they mostly agree.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
You're good. Now, these early Christians have completely wide-ranging ideas. Some of them don't even think Jesus is God. They just think he might have been just some prophet that attained apotheosis. Some of them have Pythagoras and Plato that they're worshiping next to Jesus. Some of them think that Jesus became an angel after he died. And you have these wide-ranging groups of Christians, and I say it like this: the closer you get to Jesus, the more disagreements and the more diversity of Christianity there is.
Like different denominations and stuff.
Yeah. And you would think it's the other way around. It's actually not.
Kidding.
It's actually It's if you go to 2nd century, for example, there's just so many different. There's Valentinians, there's Sethians, there's Noetians, there's the Nacenes. Yeah, these people have these different ideas of like Christ is the serpent on the cross that Moses led up.
What?
That's a whole theology behind that. Oh, there's tons of this. A good source is I learned all this from M. David Litwa. He's been on my channel quite a few times, and I've had him on to like go through all these different groups of Christians. But a really good source for it is the early Christian heresiologists.
Okay.
These are competing Christianities, and they want to like compete with each other for like who's going to be the main Christianity.
So this is the one, ish, but this is the main one that kind of won out, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah, so a lot of times you'll hear Christians, like, in fact, I actually heard, what's his name? Capturing Christianity. I can't remember his name.
Cameron Bertuzzi.
Cameron. I heard him use this term, proto-orthodox. That's just hindsight 2020 type thing. These are competing Christianities trying to win the battle of who has the best theology. And it turns out that, people like Justin Martyr, Hippolytus, Irenaeus, these guys end up being the best fit for like a church, like a Roman church. And these people are writing against these other Christianities, calling them heretics. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't know anything about them. We would have lost all contact of who these people were. But because they were talking, because they were having so much beef with each other, they wrote it down and said, "Oh, these Christians are a bunch of they're a bunch of degenerates. They did this, they do that, they do this." So now we know who they are because of that. So instead of like losing them through history, we actually preserved them by accident because they hated him so much.
Oh my goodness!
And if it wasn't for that, we probably wouldn't even know who they were. They'd probably just be gone.
So this earlier today on my channel that I had Jason from Dragons and Genesis on, and so I was asking him, how did this all like stay through the years? And this kind of answers my question in a way, like how did Christianity continue, and how do we still have it to this day? So that kind of answers a bit of my question.
I would also say too, you have to be honest about some things. Like, even though like sometimes I have like an anti-Christian bias because I look at the world today and I see a lot of problems, especially politically, with like abortions and like people not being accepting of other people. Most of those problems come from Christian circles, or conservative places. But in the early days of Christianity, to its strength, it was sort of this movement that was, in a way, egalitarian. Like, it was offering salvation to anybody. So the opposing religion during the time was the Caesar cult and the Roman imperial cult, where Caesar's the greatest. He has all the riches in the world. He has all the armies. He can do whatever he wants. And then there's like a hierarchy below that, and then it goes down to the bottom. Where Christianity sort of flips this on its head and says, no, the lowest are exalted. The women are exalted. The poor are exalted. So, I mean, that's sort of why Christianity was so compelling and so for people loved it. It was like, hey, I can be saved too.
For the
masses.
Last
will be first and the first will be last type of thing.
Isn't that a song?
Well, it has been put in some Christian songs. Yeah.
That's actually interesting you say that, because you know how there's the Beatitudes, which is the 8 statements of Jesus followed by a 9th, I think, a longer one. Kip pointed out, Kip Davis, when he was on the show, is the Beatitudes, at least that format, they're not word for word, but that format is in the Dead Sea Scrolls prior to when Jesus existed.
Yes. I freaked when he said that.
Yeah. Now it's not a carbon copy. It's they're different wording, but it's a similar thing. It's 8 short statements. Blessed are these, blessed are these, blessed are these, and a longer one. But it's like, it just clearly fits Jesus into the historical like time, time and era, and like that he was a product of the time, and that totally makes sense. And that makes sense why he didn't disavow slavery. That makes sense why Paul said, slaves, be kind to your masters, even the cool ones, because they were. Oh my god!
Sorry, our cameras. 1 second.
we're
like, I'm gonna be next now. It's like, it's happening to everybody.
We had it's so funny. We had I'm like, before, because I got my new camera set up, the first time I used it. I'm like going into the settings and turning the auto off onto high. I'm like,
sorry guys, sorry. Anyways, go on.
But yeah, it's I think I finished what I was saying, but yeah, but yeah, he was a product of his time, and there was some really cool stuff about him. But it's just what apologetics does is they go, people are doubting the Gospels, so let's find a way to make them not doubt the Gospels. Like, there are clear things in there that are products of the time. Like in the Bible, in the whole Bible, like slavery, they'll find a way. Oh, well, it wasn't slavery. It was a way of paying off debt, and it's like, no, it wasn't. Dog. Like, it was like there was sex slavery in there as well. Or slavery, genocide, infanticide. Like when someone says like, I'm pro-life, and it's like, so when God killed the unborn in the womb when he flooded the earth, how dare you? Like, like it's this God can do anything. Where do you get your morality from? Like, there's always a way to try and make it fit, and that's the whole point. It's like, it's not about finding the truth; it's about finding what fits to keep
Mental gymnastics.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
Totally.
I'll give you a prime example of what you hear a lot is you get people who say, "Oh, it says in the book of Peter that scoffers will come at the end times. That's how we know we're in the end times because
Yes.
y'all are scoffing right now."
Confirmation bias and
But
I
then
love
it's
scoffing.
it's like retrofitting, right?
But wait a minute, that was written 2,000 years ago for the people that
Yeah.
were living in that time.
Right.
They thought those were the scoffers, and 2,000 years have gone by, and people are still scoffing. And
Yeah.
1,000 years from now, people will still be scoffing, and people will still say, "See, look, it's the end times because people are scoffing."
Yeah.
Like, how does that's just a self-fulfilled? That's just like an automatically it's going to work.
Exactly.
Work out for you.
People
Yeah,
are always
exactly.
gonna scoff. Yeah, because it's kind of ridiculous.
It's what I do on my TikTok.
It shows.
Scoffing.
It
A
shows.
lot
that
of scoffing.
I love it. I
even
love a
back
scoff.
then, back then, people were like, "Hey, didn't this guy say that world was going to end before some of us are dying?" I'm like the last person left in my generation. What's going on here?
Right.
And it's
Yeah.
like you're a scoffer, so it's got to be the end times.
Yeah.
Just circles
exactly.
itself around perfectly. You're always in the end times.
Yeah. We just wanted to thank Humanist Reformation for the
Woo!
super chat.
Hey.
So
Thank
Give all
you.
your rent money to this channel.
thank you so much.
Do it.
So it says Christianity stayed because people were illiterate and easy to gaslight. The ones that could read benefited from the lie. It started falling apart with the printing press enlargement. So
Good point.
yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, you think about it for like 1,000 years, from like 4th century to 14th century, academia was just the church. So if like the church had control of all academia, all education, all anything, and that's a lot of power to have over people. You
Mhm.
control everything at that point. It's not, today you have, you go to education is not in the hands of church anymore.
Mhm.
People can think for
Right.
themselves now. So that's a different world. It's whoever wrote that makes a really good point.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the first book that was printed on the press was the Bible, right?
Yep.
Gutenberg Press.
Yeah.
16, Gutenberg,
Yeah.
Mhm.
16
I've got
something. I don't know.
That book there is a
Oh.
You're so close.
Oh,
That
there,
one.
that one
Okay,
there,
yeah.
that big one that my finger's on. That is a word for word, line for line remake of the first King James Bible, the 1611 edition.
Okay.
It's the 400th anniversary and edition, and it's even got like the little ink spots where the printing was wrong, and it's got like all that stuff in there. It's really beautiful.
Oh,
It
that's
looks
kind of
really
cool. Like
yeah,
a
it's
piece
got
of
like
actual history.
it's got and
awesome.
in the start of it, it's got like prayer times, like when you should have your prayer times, because it was part of England, and like different, and it's got the moons and stuff. Like it's got all this cool stuff in it, and imagery and stuff.
I
Yeah,
used to say once upon a time, but it's crossed out at the beginning.
yeah, exactly.
I first found out about that era that you're talking about because I was part of the King James only church, and somebody
Oh my
brought it to me like, because the King James only Baptist evangelical types, they think that God was behind the making of the King James Bible in 1611. You'll even see 1611 in the church on the wall. 1611, such a divine year. And then you're like, wait a minute, the first edition was filled with errors that they had to remake it in 16 something else. 1650. Why don't you have that one on the wall?
Yeah.
Like, if this is divinely inspired and God was behind it, why was there errors at all?
Why did he mess it up?
It should be glowing. It should be perfect. It should be floating in the air. Like what?
Yeah.
Why is there
What's
errors?
funny too is the King James Bible was commissioned by King James, but King James actually wrote a book himself called Demonology, and it was all about how to find witches and how to find demons and stuff. And it is wild. Like it is like some like bizarre stuff. Like he got onto a shipwreck, and then he was like, that must have been witches. So then his one of his relatives got on another shipwreck like shortly after. And he's like, there those witches again. So that started the witch trials, and he was like
too.
Yeah, he was buying, like he'd love giving gifts to all the men and stuff, and
That was
and
the
like
first satanic panic.
yeah, and they started looking over people with there were certain spots, like moles were considered like that you're a witch, so like they would put a pin in
left-handed.
the
Left-handed was
yeah,
bad.
left-handed, and mole would be that, and when he was dying, there was so much superstition at the time. he would have hated this, by the way, or at least the book says so, that they tried to cast the sickness into a pig. So they married him. So they bring in this, like, I'm going to get the details a little wrong, fact check me, but they bring in like a pig that was dressed up as like in a dress, and then they had the cousin be like the Pope. Like, they had all these like people in the room, and they tried to cast the sickness from King James into this pig. He couldn't talk or anything, but like, it was
So Miss Piggy.
time. yeah. So this is where people get their scientific understanding of the universe. 6,000-year-old Earth. This is where people get their it's from this guy, and in the Bible he commissioned. Yeah, it's
unreal.
Medieval stuff.
Wow, that is crazy.
A lot of the Byzantine historians in the Middle Ages, they actually date their dates from the creation. So you'll have like in the year 6002. Emperor Zeno decided to do this, and like they weren't even doing from the time of Christ; they're doing from the time of creation, and that's how drilled in everyone's head that the world was young. Like young Earth creation was big in Byzantine world, big time.
Huh.
I don't even know when it started to fall off. I'm guessing. I don't know. I have no idea, but I'm guessing probably medieval, sometime maybe 16th century. So it took a while for it to actually people started to say, "Wait a minute."
Wait a damn minute.
That's 1,000 years old. Are you kidding me? But
Yeah.
as late as the Byzantines, they were still pushing that.
Wow.
There's a bit of a spectrum here of apologists as well. There is on one side, there's the literal, like they're brain dead. Like they're dishonest. They have to be dishonest. They're brain dead. Like you got your Ken Hovins, your Ken Hams, the people who say, well, the Bible says the Earth is 6,000 years old, and rocks don't have dates typed on them, and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're just fully in like the science denial side of things. And then right onto the other side, you've got people like William and Craig who go like, yeah, evolution happened, but but because cosmological argument, and like so you've got this like spectrum of like ways. This is what I'm talking about. It's the car dealership where people are like, they're going in and it's like, oh, you don't like a Volvo? Let's look at this Mazda. Let's look at this Nissan. Let's look at so and that's what you can do with apologetics is you can find something that works. And this is something I try and get across to people who come and argue with me is I'll point out something like a scripture like and there's a scripture that says, Jesus clearly says, I tell you the truth, this generation will not pass until you see the Son of Man coming on the clouds with great glory. I tell you the truth. People standing here today shall not taste death until they see all these things happen, the Son of Man coming on the clouds. And apologists will interpret that to say the exact opposite. I tell you the truth. It's going to be 2,000 years before anything happens. I'll tell you the truth. The Son of Man isn't coming for thousands of years. Like they'll interpret it to be the exact opposite. There is a way to do that with everything, and there are apologists who will do that with everything. Like if I came to visit Stacey right now, and I was like, and then the next day I died and whatever, and there was the Church of Deep Drinks popped up and used to come. And I told Stacey on this, I said, oh, Stacey, I'm going to walk to your house. And she's like, oh, whatever, David. And the next day I rock up. They'll be like, you know what? Like some people, there'll be people who'll be like, maybe, probably not, but let's say there was. There'll be people who'll be like, you know what? David did walk all the way there. He walked across the water. This is how we knew he was the true disciple. And there were people who'd be saying, actually, David was trying to teach us very scientific things, because on a plane you might get David knew that you might get deep vein thrombosis if you don't move your legs. So he was actually walking up and down the aisle. So that's what he meant. It was very common in the day to walk up and down the aisles. So there's a way to. So I did technically walk to Stacey's house. I was just walking up and down the aisles.
Right.
So there's ways to make anything fit, but is it the most honest interpretation of that? No. Like I would say no. Definitely not.
Well, and what you were saying about as far as like in 2,000 years. Okay, so I heard, and you probably heard this too, that a year to God is like a second.
No.
Or do you know what I mean? Like they would twist it.
They pull that from Peter, which is a very it might be middle 2nd century. Scholars are scholars are starting to now say this text is not written by Peter. This is way later. It probably was to fix what you're talking about. People are probably like, what's going on here? some of the
why
things
is
of
it
writing
taking
Peter.
so long?
A day is like 1,000 years to
Right.
God.
Yeah. So
Oh,
it's like,
it's
well,
in our Bible. We're good. We're saved.
so I was always like, oh, it's only been like 2 days since Jesus has left. So according to God, so it's 2,000 years to us, but it's two days to God.
Don't they use that to justify the creation myth? And
Yeah, those are
it says 7 days, but in reality,
That's how
one
that's
day
the
equals
dishonesty
whatever.
of apologetics. Like you can twist anything, and I
you
got
can figure it out.
so
If any of this
many
stuff was
bizarre
based on
answers.
truth, there wouldn't be a need for apologetics.
Right.
Exactly.
How I see it.
Exactly.
And you know, the one that I really think, for some reason, I don't know why, but this is like the biggest one where they'll say, "But they died for that. They died for this. Why would they die for something?" Well,
Martyrs, yeah.
first of all, we don't know if they were willing to die. We don't know if for Peter and Paul, their stories come like hundreds of years later of their
Oh,
martyrs.
but Simon Peter, he celebrated when he got persecuted. Remember?
Yeah,
He
all
was
these
like,
legends come in like the 3rd century of like when they start writing the stories that we don't know the details behind the stories. The only evidence that we do have about what they should do about Christians is actually from Pliny the Younger in the early 2nd century, and it actually says the opposite. It says leave them alone. If they're not, as long as they're not bothering anybody, don't harm them. So it's like, wait a minute, it says the exact opposite. And then it's like, even if that was the case, even if they did die for this, people at the Battle of Actium died for Caesar. In the name of Caesar, they fought for Augustus against Mark Antony because they thought Caesar was God. People think all types of things. I mean, people will drive planes into buildings because they believe it. Doesn't
exactly. I want to ask, like, what do they think about Islamic extremism, like, or any type of religious extremism where people like suicide bombers? Like, what do they think of those? Like, do those people have faith? Like, I always ask this, like, do they have faith? And I'll say no.
And Christians will be the best skeptics against them.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're better than we are being skeptic against them, but
Mm-hmm.
they can't see like how they can't see like the irony there. You know what I mean?
They can't. No, they have the blinders on for anything else. So here's a couple questions. So have you seen many theists win a debate against an atheist? In your opinion?
I have. I think I don't know if it was a win,
Really?
but I think that people have done better. I think
they're
more
prepared. They have better rhetoric. You mean like better rhetoric, better prepared,
or just more logically sound, like with whatever they're talking about, because it's not usually the debate's not like, and therefore God's true or whatever. It might be so I think when Christopher Hitchens debated William Lane Craig, Christopher didn't really and look, I love Christopher, like his pictures right there. Right there.
I thought he bodied him in that one. I thought Hitchens.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought, I didn't think he engaged too much with these points. It's kind of, but I think I think it was Inspiring Philosophy and T-Jump. I think when I saw that, I thought Inspiring Philosophy did a better. I could be throwing T-Jump under the bus, but I think there was one. It might have been T-Jump, might have been someone else, but I think he actually did a better job than, or like he was more convincing to me than T-Jump. But again, doesn't mean it's true.
So it's all about skills, all about rhetoric, all about preparation.
Yeah, and I mean,
a lot of times, a theist can just know how to get out of situations and be real like slimy about things.
Right.
And sometimes you're just chasing them around and trying to pin them down, and they're just
because they are trained to do that.
Exactly. It's
like
what apologetics is.
trying to nail Jello to a wall.
So then, what is the merit then in winning or losing a debate? I personally, I'm like, whatever. It sounds like almost like a sport, right? Like just because you won at something. I don't know.
All it is to show the people that already want you to win, like get them to cheer for you, and then the other side of the debate think they won, and then people that want them to win think they won. You're just cheering on the guy that you want to win.
I'm trying to be like really brutally fair right now. I think for my Christian friends, but I don't know if he won because I have no ability to understand, but I think someone who recently did a really poor job in debating was Professor Dave Explains versus that dude. They were both really bad, but it's like did you see the debate? It was like
having a meltdown. What do you do against someone who's having a meltdown? How do you I have to defend Professor Dave here because he's literally talking to somebody who's freaking out and pointing to the wall and saying, "Do the math." That you just having a meltdown. Like, how do you do against someone like that? You just
but I thought that. Like, I thought you see, this is why I don't know enough about the chemistry, and I'm sure that the dude is slimy. But handing someone the chalkboard and saying, "Show me," that was actually like that was such a rhetorical, like, I thought, like, yeah, like the dude, like Dave didn't have the answers, right? Like it didn't come across like he had the answers. Now he probably did in the articles he was showing, but if imagine if Dave just walked over and said, "Yeah, this is how it would work," and just did it, like the conversation would be over. But it was like that
was more theatrical to me, because I think he came prepared writing that stuff down, knowing that this is very, like, this is complex. You're not just gonna have someone hand somebody a chalk and have them start filling out, like, that's complex shit. You got to be prepared for stuff like that. I think he was being theatrical. I saw right through that shit. I knew it was bullshit right away. That didn't get by me one bit.
I just thought it was rhetorically, like, to be honest, I'm a fan of Professor Dave Explains. He blocked me on Twitter recently, but I'm a fan of him. I thought he just did a poor job. I thought if he came in there like Bill Nye did with Ken Ham, and was like polite and like brought his point across, but didn't like attack him as a person by saying you're an idiot or you're clueless or whatever. I think he could have been like, he could have got past the walls of like the walls that everyone had up. And that was the other dude's technique. The other dude was like, "I'll bring a nice painting of you. Here you go. Here, I'm trying to extend an olive branch and give you a nice gift." So like the other guy, I forgot his name, was doing that. But yeah, I just kind of wish that Dave.
Until we started having a meltdown, though.
Yeah, that meltdown was amazing. There's a drinking game I come up with. It was like, take a shot every time take a shot every time someone says clueless. You gotta take a shot. When you see someone walk out of the building, like in disgust of like how it's going, you gotta do a double shot. Every time Dave insults the audience, you've got to do like you take a sip. Like, it's like you get It was fun.
We have super chats.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
So we just want to highlight.
Thank you.
To
Humanist Reformation for 2 super chats. 2 Peter says Jesus would keep his promises too, but apologists ignore that. I would have died for Jesus in the 1st century, but not after it failed.
You know what? That's such a good point, because after the 1st century rolls around and the apocalypse hasn't happened yet, and then you get people like Irenaeus in the 2nd century, you get Julius Africanus, you get a couple other people as well. And they're making their end date saying, okay, it's going to happen next century. This is our big predictions. And then that comes around and that fails. And then another person comes around and the church says, no, it's going to happen this century. And that comes around. There's about 2,000 of these for every couple of years. This keeps happening. And it's like, after a while, you got to look at that list and just say, it's not happening.
Yeah.
This shit isn't just fake. It's not real.
Yeah, exactly.
Bro, it's still happening. Like, people keep saying that. I see that on TikTok. I see it on YouTube, on Facebook.
I was on TikTok the other day, and some lady was like praying to the camera, like they typically do, and talking about how the Bible is perfect and how there's no failed prophecies. And I just said, I know a failed prophecy. And they said, and I said, let me on. And they said, just tell me what the failed prophecy is, and I'll read it out. I'm like, okay, cool. Ezekiel 26. And then, Tyre is supposed to be only an island that you can throw your nets to. Like it's still there. It's supposed to be completely destroyed and sunk below the ocean. Of course, well, that was all poetic language. It did happen, but it says but to happen in the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Well, it did happen, but there's 2 different Tyres. There's Tyre in the land. No, it's failed. Yeah. It's 100% failed. So and
it's still called the city of Tyre right now in 2023. Yeah. That's how bad
it's not a place for people to just cast their nets, and do fishing. It's not forgotten. It's
a metaphor, David.
Right.
And how do you tell the difference?
They
right?
spiritually fell. They're spiritually fallen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's so true. It's like when a healing happens, it's like, oh, the boy's healed, in a wheelchair. It's like, well, they're spiritually healed, It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we have another Another super chat from Humanist Reformation.
Yes.
Theists can't beat the lies Jesus told about the coming of the Son of Man. Most apologists don't engage in this debate. Jesus is a liar. Pants on fire.
That that did concern me when I was a Christian. I was like, I was like, how do you get around that? There was a way that you could translate the word one of the words to generation. Like, so one of the words like this, people standing here will not taste death, and you could say that was generation. But even then, that didn't really work very well, because it says people standing here today.
You know how there's some preterists that will say Jesus didn't lie in 70 when the temple got destroyed. That's what he meant. It's like, come on, like there's always like we were saying earlier, there's always a way to explain these things.
Yeah, and they'll say that the Son of Man is the Holy Spirit, the day of Pentecost. Like, that was the Son of Man coming on clouds of great glory. That was symbolic for the day of Pentecost. So it's like, okay, well, I guess so. That's kind of weak. But yeah.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. So here's one of my questions that I wanted to get your thoughts on. How do apologists misrepresent unbelievers?
Oh, I like this question a lot.
Oh, thanks.
So I think the number one thing is apologists will represent unbelievers as people who don't think there's any meaning in life, and therefore have no morality.
Yeah.
And because they don't have God, they just do whatever they want. They just are, out there in the middle of orgies everywhere, and doing all the drugs they can. And like, no, people, we do have it. The meaning of life is actually stronger, because you realize how valuable life is.
Yes.
When you don't expect there to be an afterlife, because you don't think that you don't just like, it's not like I always say this, but like, how am I better than the ant that I just stepped on? Like, I'm lucky to be alive. I'm lucky to be part of evolution. I'm lucky to be able to like enjoy myself while I'm here. But I don't, for starters, I don't deserve to live forever. So that alone makes life way more meaningful, because you know that you only have a certain amount of time to impact the people around you, to make the world better.
Yeah.
So you actually do better for the world, in a sense, because you know that you need to help the world out while you're here, so that they can have a better future when you're gone.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. When you say unbelievers, do you mean Darwinists?
I just mean like us, so we're unbelievers. I don't know, atheists.
But I believe in you.
Oh man, Darwinists are like when someone says like, "Oh, you're a Darwinist," I'm like, what the f does that mean?
Would someone call me that? I don't know.
It's Darwin, like someone who believes in evolution, like Charles Darwin.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just it's very, what I find very common is people will act as if atheism is a all-encompassing worldview. Like they'll say like atheists, and then they'll tack on, like you said, Neil, morality, or they'll tack on science, like like there are atheists that exist that don't even like the scientific method or whatever. They might just be atheists for whatever reason. There are tribes of people who don't have a theistic God. Like Buddhism, most of Buddhism is atheist, right? It's and that's the thing that gets me is atheism, at least for me, at least how I understand it, is just the response to a single question. Someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I believe in God," and I say, "Okay, why?" And they say X, Y, Z, and I go, "They don't seem like good enough reasons for me. I'm not really convinced." That's it.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that like I go to orgies and that I eat babies and it's.
But what's wrong with that?
Exactly. I don't want to kink shame anyone for eating babies, but
kink shame.
No, but that's the typical joke. What is it? I wanted to be an atheist, but I don't like the taste of babies, and it's like a typical joke, But it's true. Like people will tack on, and this is the same thing. And we're kind of doing it here too as well. We're saying like we're putting people in a broad category into a single thing, like apologists or Christians or whatever. And people will do that with atheists because my background is in marketing. So the way I see everything is like brands. Everything has a brand. Every person has a brand. Like I think we see 20,000 brand cues a day, and that doesn't necessarily mean like a logo. It could be anything. So people view atheists as a brand the same way they view feminists as a brand. I talk to a lot of people who say, oh, feminist. And I go, wait, are you not a feminist? And they go, well, I'm not a feminist. And I go, wait, so do you believe that women should have equal opportunity and equal rights? And it's like, well, yeah. It's like, well, you're a feminist, dog. Like, that's what it actually is. Like, the brand of feminism has been so, like, distorted. So, and that's what it is. So I think what happens when someone says, like, unbelievers do X, they're talking about the brand. They're not talking about the individuals. And they don't realize that.
Good point.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No,
I was going to say,
Beth.
going off what Neil had said previously about misrepresenting unbelievers. Ironically enough, when you are a believer of Christianity, you can just ask for forgiveness, right? You can do whatever you want, right. And in the end, if you repent, then you're good.
Yeah.
So I always find that very funny.
That is.
They say you have no morals.
You can literally be the worst person. I mean, you could have a Holocaust and do whatever. The last second on your deathbed, as long as you say, "I believe in Jesus," you're going to heaven.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
Isn't that bizarre to think that Ted Bundy's in heaven, but the people he killed and ate are in hell because they were homosexual?
Yep.
I mean, like, imagine that. Like, just think about that. And
Frank is in hell.
Oh yeah. Do you know what? I read her diary, and she said that, like, I mean, she was Jewish, but so she didn't know the true faith is what I would have said. But she said,
lost,
I
lost
know
the covenant. Remember that? Like, when I used to hear that in church. Yeah. They lost the covenant.
Yeah,
we have lost the covenant.
Yeah, we've taken it over. Yeah, I know. And so, but she said that she knows that God will not forsake her. She goes, I know blah, 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 but I know that God will not forsake us. And I put a little tag there and I said she was wrong. Like, God forsook her. Like, she died in Auschwitz. And then, and Christian, that, she obviously meant should be saved from Auschwitz, should be saved from the death camps.
Right.
But what Christians will do, like, I haven't talked to one, but I imagine what they'll do is, no, you got to take Christianity in its whole worldview. She's in heaven now, dancing around, because she was a child and she had a pure spirit or something.
Oh my God.
So, and that's something that Michael Jones, in Inspiring Philosophy, I talked nice about him before, so I'll talk to him about him now. That's what he would say when he came on my channel. It's like, you've got to take Christianity in its whole worldview to make it work. So suffering, cancer, bone cancer in children, earthquakes that kill thousands of people, that's all fine because you've got to take in the whole worldview of Christianity. And it's like, like, okay.
Yeah.
So tired. I just want to go to bed.
I actually thought of an answer to my question while Neil was talking. Every so often, I'll just take a peek on YouTube and watch our old church's sermons because I'm nosy like that. And one of the things that the pastor said in one of the last couple of weeks, but he said how unbelievers are afraid of Judgment Day and how we're afraid. And I was like, that's so not true because we don't believe in that. So I think that they do tell like their congregation how we're just so afraid because we know what's coming to us. So,
or that we hate God, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it was a poor job. I think people should go watch. You should see the bullets that he bit on when I confronted him. I think there was some pretty, like, well done for biting the bullets. That's what I like about Inspiring Philosophy. I think he's as honest as he can be as an apologist, but I think he's still wrong. And he's still he's a friend. But like, man, the bullets that he bit on that, like, I'm like, well done for actually biting those bullets because that's the worldview that go watch it. But yeah, damn.
So another thing that I wanted to bring up about apologists is, okay, so today you might have saw on my Facebook, but I was listening to a sermon by Vodi Bakum on apologetics in a non-apologetic age, and he was preaching about how apologetics are not just for people who are super smart or philosophical. It's for everyone. So everyone should be an apologetic. Like in the church, you should every single person needs to learn apologetics to give a defense for their faith and why they believe it. So because that's how he apparently became a Christian, was through apologetics. So he wants everyone to.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The thing about apologetics is it's been building for 2,000 years basically.
Yeah.
And so that knowledge base of what to say for certain tough questions gets passed down to the next generation, and they build off that. And they have their own like little science going on, because basically it's like they're building off of the knowledge of the apologists before them. So in this day and age, apologists have an answer for anything you throw at them.
Yeah.
If they're knowledgeable enough in apologetics, they will have a way to get out of anything you throw at them.
Oh, for sure.
That's the thing about that's what's so crazy about apologetics is it's that knowledge base is built up so much over time from people like Celsus and people like Porphyry and these ancient philosophers that were throwing all these real good criticisms at them, and they learned how to get through them from thinking about it. You know?
Yeah. Sorry, that was just really good. Thank you, Dr. Kip.
Dr. Kill.
Yeah, Dr. Kill. Yeah. Well, so when I clicked on that video with Vodi, I had 7 minutes left to watch it, which means I had started watching it a couple of years ago when I was really wanting to learn apologetics, when I was still a Christian.
Wow.
So like the little red line was like almost to the very end, and I screamed because I was like, I watched myself. Because yeah, like they really do push apologetics. And the church that we were in, they were really big on catechism, even though it was a Christian church. It was a Calvinist Reformed church. And so our kids would have been starting catechism, which I think just going by
what is catechism?
Just knowing like the basics, like who is God, and then knowing the answer. So I think that's kind of like just apologetics in a way.
Do you know, I think I almost respect that, because there are some, like I was in ministry college, I hadn't even read the Bible like through, like, and one of the teachers, he's the associate pastor that fired me, now senior pastor eventually, but he actually said, how do you know that you agree with God if you haven't even read what he said, right? And I was like, yeah, that's actually true. And something else that like my youth pastor said, I was the kind of like, I've had Christians tell me, don't go back to your old self. Like you're a bit extreme. My youth pastor said, can you be a Christian and not be a disciple? Like the idea that your mission in life is to either spread the gospel or pastoral care or something, you know. And I came away from that question saying, no, like you have to be a disciple. Like you can't just be like airy fairy. You'll be vomited out of the mouth of God. You'll be lukewarm. You know,
that was my biggest fear as a Christian.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, terrified of just being lukewarm.
Yeah, you always have that when you're around your church family. You're always worried that you're not going to be Christian enough. I think everyone feels that when you're part of especially a fundamentalist church.
Oh, absolutely.
You're always like thinking, am I doing enough? Do they think I'm real? Do they believe me? Like you always had the back of your head. Isn't that a crazy thing to think about?
Yeah.
Well, one of the guys, it's so funny. It's actually Amy's ex, but we're friends now and everything. But he comes and he's like, you know, guys, my girlfriend's pregnant, and then he's like, I made a mistake. It wasn't a good decision, blah, blah, blah. And everyone was kind of silent. And my mate, Bo, the one who does the satanic front hug, which I've talked about in other episodes, my mate, Bo, he was just, he wasn't a typical Christian. And he says that, he goes, I would more think like less of a mistake and more of like a blessing and like a happy moment in your life, like talking about the pregnancy of his son or daughter. And I was like, that's so true. Like we see like, you know, everyone was like, oh, it's a mistake. Like, I can't believe they had sex outside of marriage. Like, oh, that's horrible. Where my mate's perspective was like, no, that's a blessing. It's happy. It's good. Like they've got a baby coming. Like, isn't that great? Like, it was so funny just to see that change, that difference in perspective.
Absolutely. So how do you? Okay, this is a big question, but
slavery was okay.
How do you respond to apologetics that claim that slavery was okay during biblical times? Because I was listening, like to prepare for this, I listened to a bunch of apologists today, and that was one of the things that they were like, well, it was okay because, you know, the slaves were taken in and they were cared for, and their debt was paid after 7 years, and they were fed and given. So if you were to hear that as a Christian, you would think, oh, that sounds great.
let me try this one first. So I literally was just talking about this with a Christian a couple days ago, and I tried to put it this way. I said, imagine if I came to you and I said, I found God and I can show him to you, and you will not deny this is definitely God. Let me show him to you. I have a video of him, and then I showed you a video of a guy like eating his own shit, and then you'd be like, that's not God. Well, so that's an extreme example of like you can look and see God would not be doing that. That's a weird thing. The intellect behind that is just not. That's not a God. That's not all knowing. That's just
not godly.
It's not. Yeah, but if for a God to not realize that slavery is wrong, is almost like that, because you're looking. We now in our day and age, with all the knowledge that we have, with where we're at socially in society, we can look back and say that can't be God if he's allowing things that we now today know are just completely evil and wrong.
Because isn't he the same yesterday, today, and forever?
Right.
What about 2 days ago?
God could have been the first one to come down and say, all you humans with slavery needs to stop. I'm God, and I'm telling you this is evil, and this is wrong. Commandment number 1, no slave. Like that would have been like, we might still be believers right now if stuff like that happened. But it didn't. So you're showing me something that looks like ancient. It looks like it's not developed yet. It looks like it's not smart. It looks like it's, you know what I mean? All those things, all those boxes are checked. That to me, it does not look like a God. Looks like humans did that.
Yeah.
So last time when we interviewed Rachel Kane, remember she was talking about how you are taught from the beginning to look at the character of God as good from the very start, right?
Right.
So when you look at God from that lens, you have to somehow retrofit and make everything, make sense. So I think that's one of the factors as well that people with apologetics are trying to, you could say, justify the horrible things, but he's the best, he's so good, and therefore these things have to have been good. Right.
Well, not to shout out my own channel, but that was part of.
Are you the one in the video that he was talking about? Just kidding. We did a slavery apologetics panel, a slavery panel on my channel. And it was 5 Bible scholars, all with different expertise. Kip Davis was one of them, and we demolished the slave. Like it took so many hours. Each person had a presentation. We would awesome. Probably like 30-40 hours of work went into that, and along with that came a 29-page PDF that had every slavery apologetic that we could find. We even ran it through ChatGPT to make sure that we ran what are some apologetics for slavery, and we had every one of them written down. We had bibliographies of like when William Lane Craig said this, when Ben Shapiro said this, when Paul Copan said this, when all this and like what they said, and then we had like the references to all of that there. It's 29 pages, and then we had the Bible scholars talk about it, and it is just like, to me, what I do when someone mentions the stuff about slavery, I go, cool, and I send them the video, and I said, just watch 10 minutes, just watch 10 minutes, because like, to me, I was so sick of dealing with this conversation with people and like the misrepresentation that I'm polite to people online, and I'm like, hey, we actually had 5 Bible scholars talk about this, like maybe you could look at this perspective, because it's undeniable when you get past the slippery snake apologetics like Paul Copan, Frank Turek. Oh God, that man, it's so dishonest. It's so dishonest. And when you see it for what it is, and I think both Joshua Bowen and Kip both said this, that in academia it's a settled issue. No one's going like, oh, was it really yes, of course they own slaves, yes, there were sex slaves, yes, like they took the little virgin girls for themselves. Yes, this is settled in academia. This is not like, and they'll even say that some of these apologists, they know this, these professors, they'll know this, but then they'll spin it. So when they come out and they're talking to their audience, they'll go, well, there was a time, and they'll make it sound a lot more like friendly, but then behind closed doors, they're like, yes, of course it's slavery.
Right. Wow. We have a super chat. Just wanted to say, okay, so he was saying this in relation to something we said just a few minutes ago, but I don't know about y'all, but Kenneth Copeland makes it hard for me to want to be kind and understanding to whatever side he's on. So, understandably so. Kenneth Copeland is a whole other, bag of words.
I thought so.
Entertaining to watch him sometimes, though.
Good old Kenneth Copeland.
There's oh man, let me try and find something. I don't know if I'm allowed to share, but the Kenneth Copeland back in the day used to do these cowboy movies, these Christian cowboy movies, where he would like go around and like, you know, and like, you know, wrestle up evil and all this stuff. And it's amazing. They're in the 90s. I bought them. I spent $30 and got the DVDs delivered to my house from Kenneth Copeland Ministries because they're just amazing. I had a clip, but I won't find it. It'll take too long.
Okay, so apparently my mic is being weird. Sorry.
Yeah, I hear some static.
I heard it. It's good now, though.
But it's only when you talk, so just stop talking. Just
wow.
JK, love you.
I would unplug it and plug it back in if
He's supposed to come visit me in September. I don't know.
Ah!
Turn it off.
I don't hear it now. I think it's good. I don't hear it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If it is, just let me know.
sounds
I'm
good.
sorry. Okay.
Well, Derek isn't here to give you crap, so I have to make up for it.
Yeah.
We have another super chat
Oh my
from
gosh, you guys.
Jamie. We freaking love you all.
Is that a different one that I haven't seen? Or is that the one I just put up?
Oh, sorry, I'm an idiot.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the same one. Ha! Woo! Yay! Okay, I'll see myself out.
No.
That was awkward. Someone else super chat so we can.
No, it's good.
Kenneth Copeland wanted to buy a private jet so he didn't have to ride with the demons.
Yes, I saw that one.
Talking about us, normal people. I guess we're demons.
Fucking demons.
Demons in a, what do you say? Demons in a can or something? Or
something like that.
No, demons in a can.
You've seen that interview, right? Stacey, where that reporter just like ambushes him. It's amazing. Catches him off guard.
That reporter was gangster with that one. That is the
and he makes the creepiest face. Like,
he said,
shit like that.
I'm guard.
So it's funny because back in the day, my relatives or my dad's friend met Kenneth Copeland, and he's like, you could see the fire in his eyes, like you could see there was something behind there, you know, and you're like, whoa, and then I remember like I signed up for Kenneth Copeland's free magazine, you know, and I was like, I was like fully bought into all that stuff. Oh, jeez.
Wasn't there another apologist, a famous apologist that he was like a disciple of? I can't remember the guy's name. It might have been Pat Robertson that just passed away, actually.
Maybe.
I think it
makes sense. They're both of the same vein.
They're from the same church.
Pat Robertson say that like the earthquakes and stuff that were happening in America were because of the gays,
the sinners. And people in Haiti deserved all of it because so much voodoo and that was who it was. Immorality. So disgusting. All the money that they freaking make.
Yeah, they're I think they're like almost billionaires at this point.
Yeah.
They're not close to it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's what 700 Club was about.
He was part of the Pat Robertson Church before he started his own.
We're in the wrong business.
That's where the wealth in this country goes. People like that. That's what tells. That's how you know something's wrong with this place we live in. Like that's where your elite status is like those types of people. You know, those are the ones flying around in private jets and getting politicians elected, all that stuff, and affecting policy changes. Everything. It all goes from the top to the bottom, and it's people like that who enforce that stuff. It really is. Like it's one thing if it was like just some random people doing their own thing, leaving everybody alone, but they're not doing that. They're affecting the way people live because of their lifestyle and the way they need policy change to help them out. So it's not like they're just leaving everybody alone. They're not doing that. They absolutely need to be opposed at all costs. You know.
Well, I have a question for you guys. What do you think? I remember. Quick story. I remember when I started to read the New Testament again, and I showed my boss, and he goes, "Oh, you're getting back on it. You're getting back into the Christianity," because he's a Christian, and And I said, no, I'm just reading this. And he goes, you should get into apologetics. And I said, why on earth would I get into apologetics? Like, why do I want to like already like defend? Why would I want to look at something and not like why would I want to like come to the defense of something? Even I think you can become like an apologetics for like evolution, and I still think that would be somewhat like the goal is not truth. It's to sell a message, right?
But what would you need to defend something that already has subjective evidence? It's just weird to me.
I wanted to look at apologetics and go. I wanted to look at Christianity and go. What about this is true? What is not true? Like, I wanted to look at it objectively, not blinders on. Right. And so I wanted to ask you guys, like, what do you think? Like, let's say there is a Christian, and they're like, "Hey, I want to like find the most reasonable way to keep my faith." Like, I know this is probably against everything this YouTube is.
That's a hard one.
Is against, but like, what would you say? What would you say to someone who's like, how do I be an honest Christian? Like, how can I do it? Is there a way to do it? Is there a way to look at to reinterpret things, or to like look at Christianity as a whole and kind of accept some things and don't accept other things? Like, for me, I think like if someone told me like, how would someone remain a Christian? I would say like, well, maybe you just get rid of the inerrancy of Scripture. That's gone.
Yeah, don't be a fundamentalist. Just like be. I can see for some people it's like tradition. They grow up Catholic, they're Italians or whatever. Like, those are like people like that. That's not who I'm trying to deal with here. I'm not worried about people who are, like. I mean, I know people who are Muslims they're not fun. Like there's all types of religious people
just like culturally.
Who just culture. Yeah, they just culturally grew up a certain way and they want to continue it. And I don't see anything wrong with that. And that I think that's just, but it's like common sense though, in a way. Like, it's really doesn't need to be explained too much. Like, it's
for
like,
me,
don't be a fundamentalist. That's it.
I have to be. I don't know. I couldn't just be I have to be all in. It's either all or nothing. Yeah. So if I'm a Christian, I'm gonna be a Christian. If I'm a non-believer, well, I'm not gonna believe anything that the Bible says, and I'm gonna just be a non-believer. So I that's why I never could understand progressive Christianity, and I still don't understand it because
Stacey, I saw that comment from your school teacher or something. Matt, can you tell everyone about that, or is that too private?
No, I can okay, I'll tell it.
Wait, a school teacher commented on your video?
Oh, this made me like this made me like this. I was like, wow,
Okay, so I'll tell it quick. So I posted up on my personal Instagram a picture of me with my brother-in-law and my mom. And my brother-in-law is a drag queen. Okay, so we went to see his show. So I just posted Happy Pride, went to watch my brother-in-law compete. I'm a proud ally. Love is love, and who you are is who you are. So she replied on this picture and said, I remember when I gave your son's a sticker on his homework. Because so backstory, my kids went to a Christian private school for a short time.
I would assume that,
yeah, sorry. Gave your son's a sticker on his homework of a little bat with eyes on it, and you came in and gave me such a talking to about not celebrating Halloween. Man, you've changed. I agree with the climate and how we should be looking out for one another, love each other, and care for each other. It was just funny to think about how twisted you got over a sticker, and now you are all about this topic. Interesting to see where you will go next.
Very passive aggressive. That last comment.
Passive aggressive. I did not go in there and give her a talking to. I just I went in. I remember just saying, just so you know, we don't celebrate Halloween. I don't know if you're going to do any Halloween crafts, but we just don't celebrate Halloween. That was all I said. I didn't get all twisted and.
See, I imagined you as like a Karen,
If I was still at my church, I probably would have said Halloween's demonic or something.
Well, I believe that.
I've changed a lot since my Christian years. I've changed completely 180. Like, so even if that, like, I get it. Like, we're changing. Like, we see the world differently. And once you let go of that belief in this thing being true, everything else just falls into place like dominoes, because there's no reason to like not accept certain people for who they are, because like the only reason holding that back was because of your religion. Now you don't have that. Now there's no reason to. So all these things fall into place one by one, just from the one thing being taken away. To me, it's like, yeah, she should have just been realized that, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So it was just where the part that got me interesting to see where you'll go next. I was like, do you think I'm just
what's her
this,
next?
Like,
where's she going next?
Yeah.
So,
That part was like pretty passive aggressive.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
So anyways, but as far as progressive Christianity, that was one where I was just I kind of found that it was a little choosy. Like I don't know, like I always believed like I didn't want to make God in my image. I wanted to believe the Bible and for everything it said. And I thought when I was still a Christian, like Calvinism was the proper way of being a Christian.
Yeah,
I
don't know much about Calvinism. Sorry, go.
I don't know. That was just I wanted to just follow it as properly and as much as I could. I really was getting into like knowing the theology of it all.
There are so many brands of it, right? There's so many flavors of Christianity. Which one is the right one? What if you're doing the wrong one? How can you even?
But that's when I was like, okay, I'm done.
Exactly.
Because there's like what 30,000 different denominations.
So going back to that question that you asked, David, right? Like, what would you tell a person, a Christian, to how can they keep their faith? Or what was the question? I'm so sorry.
Like how would what's the like what's an honest way? Like how could you make Christianity honest? Like and still remain a Christian? Like you'd have to me, I'll have to get rid of the inerrancy of scripture. I would just have to say these warm feelings that I have, I like them. That's why I'm a Christian. That's the thing.
It also depends on what aspect of the religion would make it honest, right? Is it about following Jesus? Is it about worshiping God? Is it about just being nice to other people? Like I don't know. It depends on what the goal is, right?
Yeah.
But I would say to somebody, it's like, hey, keep asking questions, and if your belief is true, then it should make you more Christian. It should reinforce your beliefs. But if it leads you the other way, then that's just the way things go.
Nah, that's gonna make him an atheist. You can't do that.
Fuck, never mind. Okay, well, never mind that.
No.
Don't ask questions. Don't ask questions.
Okay, let me ask you this. Let me phrase it. Let me say I got a magic genie, and a genie pops out, and I say there's some form of Christianity that's true, right? It's actually true, and like let's remember there's 45,000 denominations of Christianity, according to this poll. And there's Christians who believe the Bible has no truth in it. There are Christians who believe, that LGBT folks are fine. Like, what version? Like, how would you get it? Like, is there a way? Like, have you thought about this? Is there a way to make it true? And if this is totally off topic,
I personally don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
What do you think, Stacey?
I got to think about that for a bit because.
What's the question?
So, like, let's say there's a magic genie and it popped out of a bottle and said there is some form of Christianity that's true, like some interpretation of Christianity. Maybe it's the Jordan Peterson type where there actually is no God. There's just good morality in there and some good tales, and it's the zeitgeist of the human like whatever it says. Maybe it's that. But like, is there a way to remain a Christian? Do you think, or do you think it's all just like gone?
I would just go back to the traditional thing. It's your traditional, it's what you grew up in, and you're not like taking it that serious where you think other people need to convert. It's just it's just a part of your family life.
Enjoying grandma's spaghetti. It's like, I've always enjoyed grandma's spaghetti. Yeah, it's like that. I think I could see that working. If you had to like, and that's all it was, right? Like, yeah, I don't know.
When I meet progressive Christians, my first question is, why Christianity? Why not just be a pagan or something? Like start a temple of Athena or do some cool stuff. Like if you want to have a God worship and like religion, you want to have that religious feeling of like being a part of. Start some new shit. I'm like, why not? Like that's what I've been saying for a little while now. I look to see more of that happening.
I think those people probably grew up with Christianity and they don't like the way it's going, so they want to hold on to that.
They just made up their own and kept the label. That's all it is.
That's all it is. Exactly.
That's it. And that's something that you said there, Neil. That's so spot on. That religious feeling. I still get religious feelings when I read parts of the Bible, and I still get religious feelings when I read, surprisingly, the Bhagavad Gita and the Quran. I like, whoa, like something like, I'm reading, I'm like, wow, this is such
or
an
you hear good music, you hear good
music.
It's
metal.
Yeah.
There's something about that energy, there's emotion.
Absolutely.
Good films might make that happen.
Yeah.
So it's like, I get why people want to gravitate towards joining a religion, but it's also like you have the control over like what those fundamentals are and what those beliefs are. You don't have to necessarily follow this one book. You can do whatever you want with it. Make it like art. Do whatever you want with it,
We accept and like to get into the really super spiritual stuff, because I come from a Pentecostal background and we saw speaking in tongues. I did speaking in tongues and all that stuff. We have optical illusions and we accept them. Like outright optical illusions, audible hallucinations, like you see, well, how like you see like a puzzle and it moves on the screen.
You accept that in everyday life.
Yeah, we accept that our eyes can fool us, but we don't accept that for emotions. And it's like, I think we should. I think like you look at people getting hypnotized and it's like, well, what's going on there? It's like, well, the brain is a complex, weird and wacky thing. And sometimes when people have spiritual experiences, it'd be my guess that that's what's happening. It's some sort of an emotional illusion. It's some sort of it's the brain doing something that we don't fully understand yet. It's a type of hypnosis. It's a type of psychology that we don't fully understand, and so I think that like that's for me, that was like a big like nail in the coffin that I put to Christianity when I realized that you could replicate the spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual experiences outside of a spiritual environment. And I was like, damn, like that, because that was like, I remember looking at someone flailing around on the floor and having a kind of like a seizure type of spiritual event, and thinking to them like, and thinking, I can never deny this. I can never deny what's happening here. I remember saying that to myself. I can never deny this. But I don't deny that it happened. I just deny the conclusions,
the
of where it
origin
came from.
of it,
Right.
or why it was happening.
I just don't know if the prayers that we were saying were connecting to some spiritual realm that was infesting him with demons and stuff. I don't know if that's the case. And it also explains where Christianity came from. Like it's like let's grant that the day of Pentecost was a real thing. Your leader has just been killed. Everyone's wondering what happened. And you're praying in this upper room. All the people, a bunch of people keep leaving and leaving and leaving. And there's just 120 left. And then all of a sudden, everyone has this moment of hysteria. That totally fits with like what we know about human psychology and human and ritual and expression, right? And then, but it's then saying this was God, and then that using that to perpetuate your religious beliefs. Like that's where I think the logic kind of breaks down. I could even grant that the day of Pentecost happened. I just don't know if it's
how it happened.
I don't know if it was actual tongues of fire coming from heaven. It might have, which wow. Think about this, like Jesus, like even if you take the Bible at face value, like so what like Jesus ascended up into the clouds, right? And so like he had to ascend at a rate that was like, like people could see him, so it's probably like 50 miles an hour. And he went through the clouds, right? And then like he's out in space. But like, so I worked out the math, right? So like we can see 13.8 billion light years away, right? And so you imagine he's ascending to heaven, okay? So like Jesus hasn't returned because he's not even at heaven yet. He's still got billions of years to go. If he's still, unless he either disappeared, in which case, why wouldn't he just disappear on Earth? Or he like sped up to faster than the speed of light. Like it's like it's
what's that recent satellite that just threw out there? They're gonna catch him on that one.
Yeah, they can see the infrared. They can see the spiritual. Yeah,
you see him floating up in the sky,
just like Superman. Just like I
gotta
get there.
In the microwave background, you can see it in the
right.
There's like a little cross there. Have you seen those like Google Louis Giglio?
Yeah,
Yeah, and he's like, in the DNA, there's a strand that is the shape of a cross. Our body is held together with like crosses, and then it's like up in the universe, there's like a and it was like this. It's like the worst
DNA
It's
code.
like this cross that looks like this. Like it's like you can kind of see kind of a cross in like some galaxy far, and it's like, damn, dude. Like I don't know, man. This
so
seems...
asinine, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I've seen that shit on TikTok. It's so sad.
Michael Shermer wrote a whole
Michael
Shermer wrote a whole book about that called The Believing Brain, where
Oh, yeah.
we're looking for patterns like that.
Yeah, patterns.
Oh,
That's all it is.
I've got that up there.
You
Yeah.
just choose it. Like, oh, that cloud looks kind of like a Jesus figure. Yeah. We'll just say it is, and then also look at it again, and then it looks like it. Because now you just made it that way. And, your brain can like make it
Right.
right.
I also get amused when people say, "Oh, God is actually written in our DNA." Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, when people breathe, it's Yahweh. It's like, have you heard that one? It's like the Hebrew words, like, so every time someone is breathing, they're saying the word Yahweh, and it's like, or some, I don't know.
Really?
You're like, damn, dude, like, yeah, that's great.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so Wes has a question. Who is the apologist you respect the most? Anybody you know or well known?
That's a good question.
Once I would have said William Lane Craig, but I've changed my mind on that. I'm just Googling apologists.
To see who like Google puts at number one.
Yeah, well, I'm just seeing like if I remember,
because it's not even like, because there might be some Christians that I respect, but like I wouldn't call what's his name, an apologist, Dale C. Ellison Jr.
Okay.
He's a Christian, and he's a PhD, he's a scholar, but I don't know if I'd call him an apologist. He's not really an apologetics guy, but I guess I would throw him up there as the answer and saying, like, because he sort of does defend the faith a little bit because he's a Christian, maybe. Like respecting an apologist is like kind of like an oxymoron.
I was gonna say an oxymoron.
I was gonna say that.
I'll give credit where credit is due. Lee Strobel is a brilliant writer, very convincing.
Did
just
you
not
see
accurate.
this comment?
Yeah, no, I didn't see that. No, like I messaged I sent a voicemail to Kip, and I was like, dude, like, do you know what Lee Strobel's book? I've got the audio version, and it's like, this is what it's like. He's like, I'm going to go interview a professor, and he's just like, professor, I'm not sure about this verse. And the professor's like, I took a sip of my coffee, and then I was like, well, actually, this verse actually does prove this. Really? Is that really the case? Yes, it is the case because blah blah blah. And then like he's constantly playing this like this narrative of like he's the skeptic coming in to like throw down with these like these like Christian professors, and then at the end he's always like, how's this affected your faith? And they're always like, oh man, it's made my faith way stronger. I'm a total Christian, and that's what the whole book is. Like,
I want to
it's just
hear
like,
you do the audio book.
Oh, dude, like, it's wild. But one of the sneaky things he's done in the book. And sorry to soapbox again, but one of the sneaky things he's done is he's talked to a professor and he's saying like, do we have evidence of Jesus, like from like writings that aren't extant? And the whole like previous chapters are talking about the life and times of Jesus. Like, what do we know about Jesus? What did he do? Was he, does he die? Did he resurrected? And then the professor says, we have manuscripts from the Bible within a generation, within 10, 15 years, right? And you're like, huh? No, we don't. None of the Gospels. Oh, I see what he did there. He said Bible. So he's talking about the epistles. He's talking about he's talking about Paul's letters. They don't talk anything about Jesus's ministry. And then you're like, okay, so then what do we have of like the, I wrote this down. And what do we, this is a little quiz I put on my, my community tab. When do you think the Gospel of Mark was written anonymously? It was the earliest of the four Gospels of Jesus. According to consensus scholarship, when was Mark most likely written? During the Jesus' life, within 10 years, 25 years, or 40 years?
40.
The answer is 40, yeah. 40 years after events. That's the earliest, right? Okay, cool. The Gospel of Mark was anonymously written 40 years after Jesus died. But what is the earliest surviving complete copy of the Gospel of Mark?
It's like
50 years after Jesus died, 170 years after Jesus died, 340 years after Jesus died is the answer. Right. Like 370 CE.
Yeah. And you know what's so crazy about what you just said? Gary Habermas. You guys know who Gary Habermas is? He's the one who he gets like peer-reviewed articles about the resurrection being like proven and stuff. He's the oh, by the way, speaking of your book, from what's his name that you were talking about?
Case for Christ.
Case for Christ lays out Gary Habermas as the big kahuna for his it's Gary Habermas. No one can touch Gary Habermas. Gary Habermas goes around to churches and teaches that there's more evidence for Jesus than Alexander the Great.
Yeah, I heard that in
Listen to what he'll say. He'll say there's no sources for Alexander the Great for 400 years till after he's dead. And he'll say Arian's the first source for Alexander the Great, which isn't true. It's not true at all. First of all, you have etches in Egypt on the wall in hieroglyphics saying King Alexander was here. He anointed Ptolemy. Then you even have in Babylon, you have inscriptions in the wall there. King Alexander died.
Physical evidence,
evidence everywhere. And then you have sources that are cited by the historians that go back to the 3rd century BCE. Now, here's what he did. We don't have those copies of those physical manuscripts anymore. The physical manuscripts are in the 1st century, 400 years after. So he uses that to argue that Alexander the Great's evidence doesn't show up for later. But then he turns around and says that there's evidence for Jesus within a decade of his life, talking about Paul's epistles, even though you don't have manuscripts.
Oh
so
my God.
Complete double standard. He's going hypothetically for Christian manuscripts, but he's going with physical hard evidence for Alexander the Great. How the fuck do you get away with that?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's dishonest.
Yeah,
the title of the show.
Bart Ehrman, man, like people, like I know a lot of Christians don't like Bart Ehrman, but like he just like sometimes he just comes out with stuff that's just so good. And he was on that show. He just bodied the other dude. He was on that show recently, the Unbelievable, or one of those like they sit down and they talk, and the guy was saying the resurrection of Jesus is like fact. It's like there's fact about it. It's all like there, right? Because there's eyewitness testimony, and he's like, okay, well, do you believe the book of? And Bart Ehrman comes on. Do you believe the Book of Mormon? And no, well, they had 4 eyewitness testimonies that they saw an angel give the golden plates to Joseph Smith, and then they have another, I think it's 12 or 8 witnesses say that they saw the golden plates, they felt the golden plates, they touched the golden plates, and they also say that and they actually left the church and said the church is false, or whatever, but they never recanted that. They said, yep, we still saw the angel, we still saw the golden plates. If you don't believe eyewitness testimony, but if you say the eyewitness testimony is good enough for the resurrection of Jesus, written 40 years after the fact by anonymous sources, you have to say the same thing about the Book of Mormon. Like and it was just such a well put together argument, and I just don't see apologists like tackling that. And that's just that's just Mormonism. Think about all the eyewitness testimonies we have to say. Like think about. Like
we have 2 sources for Caesar, or for Titus Vespasian healing somebody by spitting on his fingers and putting it on his eye, and then touching someone else and his hand growing back. Now, we all know this is Roman propaganda. It didn't happen. And even a Christian will say that's Roman propaganda. But why? You have 2 different sources, and this is not even written in myths. These are just written in histories. So why do you deny these? Yeah. But you accept a gospel story that's written in clearly mythology.
Think about today with January 6th. Sorry to get political, with January 6th and the 2 perspectives that on it was Antifa and it was the CIA versus it was just like a bunch of right-wing dudes that Trump
right.
And it's like they've got video recordings of all this. And people are still arguing about it. The eyewitness testimony, it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Like to think that eyewitness testimony is like good evidence is just so silly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Jesus had 500 witnesses, and we have an empty tomb. So, psych, checkmate, atheists.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that part of the punishment of crucifixion was to remain on the cross and to not be burial. It's kind of weird that for this one instance they decided to take his body down, and
not only that, the empty tomb narrative is a common trope during the time period. You have other stories of people who died, and they went to find their tomb, and there wasn't anyone there. So the empty tomb trope signifies that the person was deified.
Right.
So
No, what? Really?
Yeah, you didn't know.
Really?
This is in a story.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I always Neil is
Chariot.
weird, dude. He knows so much stuff.
You know so much.
He goes to. Sorry, I just need to interrupt. He goes to bed with these like textbooks of like ancient Greek like.
What a
stories,
nerd!
Like, dude,
Oh,
it's amazing.
like definitely.
It's so amazing. He knows so much stuff.
This story there's another story in the middle of the 1st century too, where a lover, it's like a Romeo and Juliet type of story, where this guy's lover gets taken away by a Persian noble, and then he stages a fake funeral for her. So he shows up with his flowers going to the funeral, and then he looks and her body's gone. So he thinks that she became a god. This people, Richard C. Miller wrote about this, saying this is a common trope for when somebody becomes deified, their body Hercules is another example. When Hercules dies, and there's many versions of the Hercules stories, but most of them, the bulk of these stories is after his funeral was over, his body was disappeared because he was a god. He became a god. So it's like if you're in the 1st century and you're reading Mark or Luke, and you're like, oh, the tomb's empty. Jesus is a god. That's what it tells you. The common trope.
Oh, I have a friend who makes a comparison and says, my empty toilet is evidence of my friend having pooped yesterday when he was here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's so good. That's so good.
Same logic. It's the same logic.
Like, same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah.
That's the second time Kip's referenced your beard.
Yeah, he really likes your beard.
It's a lot of beard today, huh?
Liking it. I'm keeping it.
Yeah, you guys all have beard.
Yeah, where's yours, Stacy?
Okay, I don't want one.
I have a beard because it hides my chin's line.
You guys all look great.
Woo!
Yeah. Oh wow, this was amazing.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you, guys.
I always love conversations like this. I'm always down. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
This was honestly incredible. I learned a lot. Laugh. So David, you can be found at Deep Drinks, and I know you have a lot of really awesome interviews coming up in July. It looks like mostly.
Yeah,
so.
July's a big month. I'm going on a big anti-apologetics arc.
Oh well, this was perfect timing.
Yeah, I think that's why. Producer Wes was like, can you talk about politics? I was like, dude, I'm about to go on a big anti-apologetics arc. We got Paula Gia coming on. We got Kip Davis coming on. We got Dennis R. McDonald coming on. Like, we got heaps of like really cool people coming on, and they've all chosen really like Dennis R. McDonald chose a really expensive bottle of whiskey. Kip Davis bottle of whiskey. Like this is a lot of whiskey. Captain Dadpool's coming on with some really nice rum. So it's gonna be a very drunk month for me.
Captain Dadpool.
Great, yeah.
You know he's not a real captain. You know that, right?
Oh, what?
Yeah. No, he deceives people.
Right.
Oh, okay.
He's very dishonest.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Love you, Ricky.
Yeah, me too. And Neil, what do you have coming up on your channel? Because you're always having amazing.
I'm actually releasing my next video maybe tomorrow with me and Steve Mason, Professor Steve Mason, and he's gonna. We did a whole 3 hours actually talking about how Luke actually uses Josephus for his sources, and he shows you how it lines up.
Whoa.
That's really
Neil is just like the stuff you're putting out, man. I'm like looking at. I'm like, I don't even know how to like contextualize. Like it's just spinning everything on its head. I'm going to the good scholars for it. I give them all the credit because it's all super niche stuff, but it's like it's so interesting. Like you said, like Josie, like it's wild. Like you had someone on recently. I forgot what they were talking. Like I should probably remember what the topic was about, but it was amazing. The channel's amazing is what I'm trying to get across.
Thank you.
Wow, that's awesome. And Baph, what do you have coming up?
More of the same. I am the co-host of the Burning Eden podcast, comedy, satire, interviews. We have guests talk about their own experiences with deconstruction. We laugh, we cry, we mostly laugh, we make fun of things, we talk shit. Yeah, and Stacy has been a guest. She can tell you her horrible experience. She regrets it very much. She just doesn't tell you. You can find me on TikTok, on the TikToks as Baphometal.666. But if you don't have the app, don't download it. It's trash. It's horrible.
I love TikTok.
Yeah, you can find my beacons link in the description of this episode. Just search for Baphometal. It's fun. Fun.
Yay.
No scholarship, nothing, very focused.
Yeah,
it's literally this is what my show is. Yeah, this is what it is.
That's great. You need
it's awesome. It's called the Burning Eden podcast. It's on fire.
It's on fire.
That's
awesome.
Great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Boom.
And and then I'm here, and then I also do a show with my mom, the Stacy's Mom podcast, which has been going really well. We've been having a great time. Like I said, we had Jason from Dragons and Genesis.
Nice.
Today we had Derek Bennett from Atheological.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was
nice.
He's awesome. Yeah,
Derek
last week, and we had David and his wife on a couple weeks ago. So yeah, it's been good. So
speaking of guests, I forgot. Have you all watched the Happy Shiny People documentary on Amazon Prime?
Yes, I have.
About the Duggards and IBLP. Well, our most recent episode has 2 of the participants that were on that episode. I'm sorry, on that documentary. We had to get permission from Amazon to interview them.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was just an email. Can we interview? And they say, sure. Okay. But I make it sound more interesting. We have to get special permission.
You have like a boardroom.
Yeah. We order our guests from Amazon, literally. But yeah, it's freaking awesome. So go check it out. It's here on YouTube, but it's also on any of podcast platforms if you like audio only.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we just wanted to thank our patrons, Sydney
Davis Jr.
Yeah. I need to ask why the Junior. I'm sure there's a story, but Eric Ozels, Tara S., Ryan, Deneen Murphy, Dan D., Michael Wiseman, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Colson, and Phil Calderon. Thank you so much.
Aaron Colson's actually the Pope of deep drinks. There's the highest tier on my page.
Really?
He's got a little image at the end of each show.
That is so cool.
Papa Aaron blesses the channel, yeah.
That's awesome.
For us, it's sinner, heathen, blasphemer.
Nice.
And I forget what the other one is, but there's different levels too.
Mine are all like Catholic tiers, like clergy and saint.
I love it.
It's like, yeah.
That's awesome.
What's the first one? Altar boy or?
No, it's congregation, and then it goes deacon, then priest, then yeah.
Oh snap! And don't forget to check out our other shows here on Skeptic Haven. We got Secular Soapbox on Wednesdays. This is the one you're watching. We got the Sunny Spot on Thursdays and Global Atheists and Women Atheists Unload on Saturdays. And also there is a new call-in show live on Sundays. It's called Let's Talk. I don't know what time it is. What time it is?
In the evening.
In the evening.
Yeah.
So just stand by, and after 12, it'll come up at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know the time of the show. But yeah, it is an awesome call-in show. So call in and chat with our hosts.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. And thanks to everyone in the chat. It's great. And for all the super chats. So we will see you all next week.
Subscribe.
Oh, yeah.
See you later.